Tonight, what happened with that explosion in East Palestine, Ohio? I've got two theories, and we'll talk to our reporter on the ground. It's February 14th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry later this week. This is the final week of hearings. Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, Defense Minister Anita Anand, and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland are also among the Liberal ministers added to the witness list.
Well, the Emergency Act is the most powerful and dramatic tool, law, that exists in Canada.
And that act then delegates the ability to deal with emergencies to the executive branch of government.
I got sprayed.
The big part of it is that there has to be a national security threat.
Lametti, why did you feel it was acceptable to make a joke about sending a tank to Ottawa?
He was going to continue to vilify these Canadians and divide Canadians because that was the only way he could hold on to power.
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names.
Small fringe minority holding unacceptable views.
I don't know if you saw these images, an enormous explosion and fire. Shocking images visible even from flying airplanes. Terrible smoke and flames. Evacuation of a village and its environs because of the chemicals in the fire. There was even some conflict between the media and the National Guard that were brought in to evacuate the town. What the heck is going on in East Palestine, Ohio? That's how you pronounce that little village's name. You know, it reminded me instantly of the tragic and horrific fire in Lac Mégantic in Quebec in 2013. You might recall an oil train coming through that Quebec town exploded and burned, killing 47 people. Of course, I do not wish to politicize that fire, though many did. I note that the safest way to transport oil, although rail is quite safe, is through a pipeline, which is being blocked by Quebec. Well, this was an industrial train that was going through East Palestine, and that is typically the safest way to move industrial goods, by train. What was interesting is that the fire was made in a decision, a willful decision to proactively ignite some of the chemicals. That's why the town was evacuated. Now, some of these chemicals, of course, have scary words in them like chlorine, vinyl chloride. Why did the authorities decide to light them on fire? Well, what happens sometimes when you don't proactively burn certain chemicals, they have an explosion because of the nature of that chemical. There's something called a bleave or a BLEVE, which is a kind of acronym for boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. BLEVE, it's just an acronym. Here's the terrifying fact of what a BLEVE is. In other words, it's when you don't proactively explode and light on fire some chemicals. They might explode on their own. Take a look at this.
Some of the most spectacular BLEVEs have occurred at train derailments. 1983, a wrecked train with 11 tank cars holding highly combustible materials bursts into flames near Murdoch, Illinois. It chooses to stay behind, a half mile from the flames.
The fire is making a sound like a jet liner taking off, something apparently blew up just a couple of minutes ago and started this big roar of flames and the sound of a jetliner.
What the news crew doesn't know is that the noise they are hearing is a warning of an impending levee carrying propane gas. Moments after the reporter signs off, 30,000 gallons of boiling propane push the tank's metal walls to the breaking point.
Okay, take mine. Leave it up.
The news crew feels the heat wave from the blast. In this blast, rockets nearly 3/4 of a mile into a field.
At the Murdoch explosion, the propane car that levied set a record and traveled 3,640 feet.
As night falls, the flames finally make their way to a nearby tank car filled with highly flammable isobutane. This latest levee creates a blinding whiteout as 50,000 gallons of fuel is ignited.
So what on earth is really going on there? What happened to the train? Who made the decision to blow it up and to evacuate? Was that the right decision? Well, we decided to send some reporters down there to follow the facts because I don't know about you, but my Twitter feed was full of speculation. People even comparing it to Chernobyl, people saying that there was a massive government cover-up. Is that true? Or was it just people on Twitter doing what they do best, speculating and using their imaginations and cooking up a kind of conspiracy theory? Well, we sent our lads down from Toronto, and here's their first report they filed when they started their day early this morning in East Palestine, Ohio.
Lincoln J. reporting for Rebel News. Now, as you can see by the sign beside me, we are in the village of East Palestine, Ohio. Now, this name may sound familiar to some of you as a train containing hazardous chemicals derailed, and essentially all of those chemicals have spilled, causing thousands of the residents here to evacuate. Who is to blame? Do the residents feel safe? Is it safe to be here right now? That's what we're gonna find out as we're here on the ground at the scene of the accident. Just last week, a major train derailment of 50 cars carrying very hazardous chemicals has resulted in thousands of people being evacuated by officials over the fear of the explosion setting off.
It was a mess. I took my wife to the doctor, and coming back from the doctor, we couldn't even get back to our house. And we had no clothes, no medicine, nothing. We had to go to Youngstown to get a room.
One of those chemicals is vinyl chloride, which is extremely toxic to humans.
We're still very nervous about it because they keep coming up with contaminated water problems, and I don't know, I'm even half afraid to shop.
Fast forward to today, the evacuation order has been lifted. We've already spoken to residents on the ground, and many of them simply feel that there isn't much transparency here.
My kids, we're just running in to grab something, and then we're going back to grandma's house because they keep breaking out in rashes.
Kids do?
Yeah.
So you kind of answered my next question. Do you feel like it's safe here right now?
I feel like we're not being told everything. I know something came out yesterday about them covering up contaminated soil when they rebuilt the railroad instead of pulling it out like they promised.
But many of the residents are pointing the blame at Norfolk Southern, the company responsible for the train. Do you think it's safe here right now?
I don't know. They're to me, they're keeping everything kind of hush hush. They're not telling everybody everything.
We'll talk to Lincoln J. a little bit more later on in the show. Here's what I think. I think that trains are extremely safe. There's trains all over America. We don't really pay attention to them because most of them are not passenger trains. We prefer to go by car. There's so many trains carrying so much stuff on so many tracks that there are about 4 derailments every day in America. Sounds like a lot until you realize that there are 40,000 100,000 vehicle accidents on our highways in America. There'd be a proportionate number of accidents in Canada. And of course, most industrial products go by train as opposed to by truck, especially if you're taking certain things. You generally don't go through towns. You are on rural railroads. But this was spectacular, this fire and this explosion. But it's not that abnormal to have a spectacular explosion once in a while in a country as large as the United States. But here's what I think was really torched in East Palestine, Ohio. The chemicals were, the train was, there was a derailment. But I think what was really torched were the experts. And the problem is something not regular, but not unusual happened. A derailment, an explosion.
Oh, hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I bet this interruption from me is kind of annoying. I mean, frankly, I don't want to be here either. I loved the show you're watching, and I'd be slightly bothered having some journalist pop in to disrupt my viewing. So if you don't want this to ever happen to you again and just have me or somebody else show up in the middle of your show, please consider becoming a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, where you will get early and ad-free access to incredible premium Rebel News content just like this. It's easy and cheaper than Netflix. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com to join today. Thanks. And back to the show.
But we don't trust the media or the government anymore. Here, for example, is Joe Biden's transport secretary, Pete Buttigieg, talking about everything except for the railway explosion. He's even talking about the racism of highways. That's one of his favorite subjects. Here he is, not addressing the fire and the explosion.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges, on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
Now, maybe he just didn't think it was worth addressing, or maybe he was covering something up. That's the thing. When you're so skeptical about your leaders, you no longer give them the benefit of the doubt. And especially in the last 2 weeks when insane things have been happening. These high altitude air balloons. Are they indeed coming over from China? Are they spy satellites? Do they have weapons in them? And why weren't we told? Why were we kept in the dark? Why did NORAD, the North American Air Defense Treaty, not down the first balloon till it had finished its mission sailing all the way across America? Why was the second one only shot down over Canada? And who actually made the orders? Here's Justin Trudeau claiming it was him.
Yesterday, NORAD confirmed that an unidentified object entered unlawfully Canadian airspace. It represented a reasonable threat to civilian aircraft, so I gave the order to take it down. Canadian and American fighter jets were scrambled, and an American F-22 successfully shot down the object. Recovery teams are on the ground looking to find and analyze the object. Yesterday afternoon, I also spoke with President Biden and confirmed together that we will continue to do everything necessary to protect the sovereignty of our shared North American airspace, but also to do everything necessary to keep our citizens safe. I want to thank the members of the Canadian Armed Forces and all those who serve in NORAD for doing everything necessary to keep us safe. Their service is extraordinarily important to all of us.
Do you really think it was him? Because here's the Pentagon claiming it was Joe Biden.
And while we have no specific reason to suspect that they were conducting surveillance of any kind, we couldn't rule that out. That is why the President, at the recommendation of the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the NORTHCOM NORAD commander, gave the order to shoot them down. These missions were completed successfully and safely.
Do you see my point? strange things with people who were supposed to tell us things, government things, safety things, transport things, have been silent, keeping secrets, or even lying to us, or bungling things. And you put this explosion and fire and the evacuation and the sending out citizens and journalists from the town, you think about that in the context of energy poverty and food poverty, and you start to think, is there a connection? There's grocery stores in America where you can't find eggs. There's pharmacies in Canada you can't get basic medicines. Inflation. The government says it wants to get people off of meat. The government says it wants to get people off of fossil fuels, off of plastics. Is this part of some scheme? How do we even know anymore? And all this comes on the heels of a 3-year lie about vaccines and their efficacy. And so you can understand why a strange fire that was set by the government, the town evacuated, would make a lot of people say, is there something nefarious going on? Is the government hiding something from us like they hid the balloon from us? Is the government involved? Are they trying to gaslight us? I mean, for example, here's Bill Gates, who for years said the vaccines were our only solution, and you were a fool not to take them, saying the vaccines didn't work. Take a look.
The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration, particularly in the people who matter, which are old people. And every one of those things is fixable. In fact, doing that work is going to help vaccinology very, very broadly.
So do we trust Bill Gates? And how did he even become an expert in vaccines in the first place? And why would we trust someone who's such an inveterate liar, whose own wife divorced him because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Here's some recent questions that he was put in Australia.
Now, one of the issues that's dogged you is that of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100th time, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, I had dinner with him, and that's all.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
Mm. And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein,
There never was any relationship of any kind.
The reason I mention Bill Gates in this context is because there is no trust in the so-called experts anymore. So many of the leaders of our society, in business, in government, in media, there's no trust there anymore. We don't trust the politicians. We don't trust even the bureaucrats in the government, even doctors and people in white lab coats, public health officials. We don't trust them anymore. People in uniform who we venerated after 9/11, those police started to enforce mask rules. In Canada, the military was on standby to defeat the truckers. Do we trust people in uniform anymore? We don't trust scientists anymore. We don't trust the media anymore. And so that's why we decided to send journalists down to East Palestine, Ohio, because it was only 5 hours away from Toronto, and because we wanted to find the facts for ourselves, not rely on the government or the media. Now, I think we're going to find some psychosomatic problems, people who are worrying themselves into a health scare, and there may well be some chemical issues. You can't have that much of toxic chemicals released into a town, in the air, in the soil, into the rivers without some effect. But I predict that following the facts, as our reporters will do, we'll find that there's nothing here, maybe except what's obvious and evident. People have rarely been less certain about the world and the people and authorities we used to rely on unquestioningly. Stay with us. Lincoln J. from East Palestine is with us next.
Hey folks, check out the newest arrival to the Rebel News store. Yes, F is for Fidel and F is for Father. I mean, could it be? Yes, half this photo, the colored half, is Justin Trudeau. The black and white half is a young Fidel Castro. Wait now, or is it vice versa? It's so confusing. I'm a huge Forensic Files fan. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a piece of Justin's DNA and a piece of Fidel's DNA and put the rumor to bed once and for all? But in the meantime, we'll just have to walk around wearing this shirt, hinting at a great Canadian conspiracy. Or is it? In any event, if you want to get this shirt, folks, go to the Rebel News store and check this out. Justin Trudeau, Fidel Castro. As they used to say on the ABC detergent ads, can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference.
Well, I saw so much speculation on Twitter about what was going on in this small town called East Palestine. It looks like the word Palestine, but apparently they pronounce it Palestine. It's right on the border between Ohio and Pennsylvania. And what I saw felt slightly conspiratorial. There were some shocking images of smoke and explosions and things like that. And I thought, you know what? Everyone on Twitter is guessing, but our world headquarters in Toronto is not too far away from Ohio and Pennsylvania. If you know your map, you'll realize it's only about a 5-hour drive. So two of our more adventurous souls, Efrain Monsanto and Lincoln J., got in a car and drove there to see what the facts were on the ground rather than just speculating on Twitter. Although speculating on Twitter, I can tell you from personal experience, is a lot of fun. Without further ado, let's go straight to our friend Lincoln J., who is live from East Palestine, Ohio. Lincoln, great to see you. Am I pronouncing that right? They call it Palestine?
Yep, you're bang on with the pronunciation.
All right. It's just, I've never heard of it. It's a small town of 5,000 people. I guess there's no reason I would have heard of it. It took you 5 hours to get down there. First question, were there any barriers to getting into this town? I know earlier they had an evacuation. They were barring people from getting in. Were you able to get into the town without any problems?
Yep. So we arrived here late last night, and we were expecting to see some form of, I'm not sure, checkpoints or whatever the case might have been, but nothing. We were able to drive right into the town, and we've been driving around the town all day. As you can see, there's cars driving behind me. The town, or the village, it's actually called, is pretty well open, but the road is blocked leading up to where the train derailment happened, the general area where the train derailment happened, because it's a bit of a stretch where it actually took place. And what we're finding from being on the ground is that residents are definitely scared. The town, if you just walk around, you're not paying attention to the news, and you're just strolling around the streets, you wouldn't think that anything happened here. But then you start to pay a bit more close attention, and you can see that something did happen here, because around the town, there's a creek, there's different streams, ponds that run through East Palestine, and there is some sort of water treatment going on throughout the town, and we're trying to figure out exactly what it is, but they just won't talk to us, and they're not very transparent on exactly what is happening.
Huh. And there's a giant truck passing behind you. Now, I don't know the nature of that truck. It could be to remediate the spill, or it could be just an industrial truck. I'm not an expert in these things, and that's one of the reasons why we sent you there, because so many armchair experts on Twitter were saying dramatic things. Let me ask you a question that only you would know by being there. Can you smell anything in the air? I know sometimes you're near a fire, you can smell the burning of, you're near a forest fire, you can smell it. Is there anything in the air that you can smell?
It's hard because your mind kind of plays tricks on you when you're in these types of situations. The placebo effect starts to kick in. But Efron and I, we haven't really noticed anything. We've only been here for a day, so far so good. Some of the residents, though, that we have been talking to, one of them has a small child, and apparently the child has been getting rashes. We've seen reports online about dogs becoming ill, but we just interviewed a resident here, brought us inside his house, showed us around, and his dogs seem to be doing just fine. So it's hard to gauge what exactly is happening down here. That's why we're down here, to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine if you're extremely worried, which you would be if there was a derailment, an explosion, and a fire, and an evacuation. Who wouldn't be worried? You'd have to have superhuman confidence and a constitution not to be worried. And then, like you say, you're hypersensitive to anything. I mean, kids get rashes, dogs have tummy trouble. I mean, it's just it. But if it happens to coincide with this event, human nature would make us think it's because of this. Now, look, I'm not prejudging, but there was a whole lot of prejudging going on Twitter. And I thought, well, let's go there. And you've already told me a few things that no, the town is not blocked off. Yes, the spill site is, but the town would feel normal if you didn't know what's going on. They are remediating the water. You say some people are concerned that the town is not being transparent enough. Now, that is a concern, but then again, that is a standard critique of government. Have you spoken to anyone who I might call an official, whether it's like a town councillor or even a senior person who might have some inside knowledge, a fireman? I bet the fire department was deployed on this pretty quick. Maybe a doctor or a nurse. Is there anyone who's actually been involved with the evacuation, the cleanup, anything like that? Have you talked to anyone other than, I mean, it's useful to talk to ordinary men and women on the street. Have you talked to anyone who you might call sort of an official?
So we haven't spoke to anyone as far as government or any official like that, but people that we have spoken to so far off camera are people that are actually cleaning up the site. We ran into an individual who was in a full hazmat suit inside a McDonald's, and we approached them and just tried to speak to them, see if they would come on camera. But they told us that they simply cannot. They actually tried to call their boss to see if they could speak to us. They wanted to speak to us, but they couldn't. They're being told not to talk to us. We've tried to talk to multiple of these workers that are treating the water. I'm not sure the exact name of the workers, but we've tried to speak to multiple of them. And they're basically all telling us the same thing, that they've been told not to speak about it. And they're just simply not commenting. But some of them, you can tell that they do want the story out. One guy made a comment to us saying, "Sorry, we can't talk to you, but please get the story out." So like I said earlier, we've been talking to residents, and from walking around, it doesn't seem like anything's wrong. But when you talk to locals, when you talk to the residents here in East Palestine, you can tell that they feel something is wrong. And a lot of them, they're just coming in just for supplies and then they're leaving. But at the same time, a lot of them are just strolling around, schools in session. So it's really hard to gauge what exactly is happening and if there's any real potential health hazards here.
Yeah, now obviously you don't want to get any of those cleanup workers in trouble. I suppose you could try and interview someone by not showing their face, or you could even just say, look, I'm going to leave the camera over there. Can I just talk to you privately, heart to heart? Tell me what, like that one fellow who said, I can't talk to you, but you've got to get the story out. Okay, well, what is the story you want me to get out, brother? I mean, in a way, that's sort of a teaser saying you've got to get the story out. I just can't tell it to you, but find it. Well, you know, that's a frustrating thing. I mean, and who knows, maybe they're having a little bit of fun with you, or maybe there really is something. I don't know, but it's interesting that they're all told not to say anything. It sounds like that's got to be the rule if every single one of them is saying that to you. I wonder if any of them would feel comfortable just off the record, no cameras rolling, just talking to you one-on-one, not being recorded in any way. They could, like, what exactly are they worried about? Are they worried that they're not following standard procedure? Are they worried that there's some chemical there that they haven't disclosed? Are they worried that, you know, I don't know. I'm curious. It's very interesting what you've just said. I think you should spend at least another day there poking around. Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. What should be interesting, and maybe we'll be able to talk to some officials here, is tomorrow night there is a town hall meeting. And now originally the town hall meeting was supposed to take place in one of the buildings right on the main strip of town, or the village, I should say. And they've actually had to relocate it to the high school gymnasium because supposedly, this is just what we're hearing, supposedly there's thousands of people who want to show up to this town hall meeting. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We're going to find out tomorrow because we will be on scene. But it should be interesting to hear what the residents have to say in more of a formal setting rather than just talking to us one-on-one. But we've been able to get some good stuff here, and I think our viewers are really going to like to see the firsthand perspective of what's truly going on here just from walking around.
Well, I really appreciate that. Make sure you get a good seat in the town hall. Maybe you can get someone to save it for you, because I think people coming into that town hall, I bet you everyone has a point of view. It'll be interesting to see if going into the town hall, they have one point of view, and then will it be changed? You might even be able to ask the same person going in and coming out, were your fears mollified? Did they answer your questions? Do you feel there was accountability and transparency? That sounds very exciting that they've got that town hall. You've got a lot of work to do. There's the two of you. I know you'll do a great job. I'm delighted you're down there. Thanks for doing this. For folks who want to chip in. So are you guys staying in the actual town? Were you able to find a motel in the village?
Well, it's important to note that this is really small town America here. I believe the population is around 4,700 people in this village. It's very rural. You can basically drive around the whole village in 5 minutes, if not less. So we're staying outside in North Lima, I believe it's called. It's about a 20 minutes outside of town. So we drive in the morning and basically set up for the day and see what we can find. But like I said, it's a really, really small population of people here. A lot of the people truly feel like they're not being told everything. And some of them feel like the train company just wants the trains to keep on rolling. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Last question for you. Are there other journalists on the ground?
We've seen some independent journalists, but as far as mainstream media, we haven't seen too much, if all. The only mainstream media journalist that we've seen on the ground here is a local, I believe it's Fox Cleveland. Other than that, not much. It's basically just us and a few other journalists. And like I said, it's really, really small here. So you run into people. You're not really missing anybody. So, yeah.
I was looking on a map. It's only an hour away from Pittsburgh, which is a pretty big city. And Akron, it's not like it's rural. And in that sense, I suppose it's quote remote, but it's actually, an hour's drive from a lot of high population centers with big media. I wonder if they'll show up at tomorrow's town hall. I'm glad you'll be there. Maybe you'll get the scoop. Listen, congrats on it. Give my best hello to Efron, your colleague. And for folks who want the latest, we've set up a special website at ohioexplosion.com. And that's where all the videos will be put. And I'm guessing between the gas to drive down there, the hotel, the meals, stuff like that, I think it's going to cost about $1,500 or $2,000 to have the two of you, mainly gasoline. To drive all the way down there and then 2 or 3 nights. So if folks want to chip in, they can go to ohioexplosion.com. I feel like you guys are going down there as a kind of fact checker because we don't have an agenda other than what's really going on. I don't think we're going to get the answer by reading tweets written by people in New York and LA. I think the only way to find out is what's going on the ground. Last word to you, Lincoln.
Yep, that's exactly. I completely agree. In order to actually gauge what is happening here, in order to actually feel what the vibe is like on the ground, you actually have to be on the ground. And the people have been very receptive to us. People want to talk. It seems that people want to get the story out, and people are happy that we're here. Like the gentleman we just interviewed couldn't thank us enough for being on the ground and basically giving him a voice. So we're happy to be here, and we're happy to have all the support from the viewers.
Right on. Well, thanks for going on this adventure. Look forward to your safe return to our world headquarters. Well, there you have it. Lincoln J., along with Efron Monsanto in East Palestine, Ohio. Stay with us. More ahead. Hey, welcome back. Your letters to me about Calgary and their bylaw against people who protest in ways the mayor doesn't like. Cam Sonnenberg says, being concerned for the safety and well-being of children is all right, is alt-right. Is the mayor taking her children or grandchildren to drag shows? Yeah, when I clicked on that link on the CBC page, where's the proof of the alt-right? They don't have any proof other than a CBC story that just alleged it without any facts behind it. The CBC is obviously a player in this story. Jesse says, I'm glad they don't feel safe. We need to leave them behind. Progress is living your life, raising a family, not constantly adapting to the whiners of the country. People that complain about feelings didn't build the country. Hardworking men and women that raised decent human beings did. Well, look, I don't want anyone to be unsafe, But I don't think they genuinely felt unsafe, other than in the modern sense of, I'm triggered. I need a trigger warning. I need a safe space. No one there was unsafe. And if they were, the police would have taken care of it. What they want here is political hygiene. You heard the mayor in the clip I played. She thinks that horrible people, as she describes her opponents, should be censored. It's got nothing to do with safety. Patricia says, frightening as well as outrageous. Looking forward to Jordan Peterson's pro-human consortium this fall. Thank you, Ezra, and thank you, Rebel News. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I had the pleasure of seeing Jordan Peterson in the Toronto area in December when he spoke at a Democracy Fund event. I really think he's such an important public intellectual, and I love how he fights back against cancel culture. They tried to cancel him in Ottawa. I think what wound up happening there, if I'm not mistaken, is they added another evening. He was so popular. That's our show for today. Until tomorrow, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.